Welcome. I'm Pamela Rickia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Amanda Sharma. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Pam.
Hello. I came across Amanda online a while ago and have really enjoyed reading her articles about unschooling on Medium and various other websites around the web, and I'll definitely link to those in the show notes. She has a really interesting perspective because she grew up unschooling and now she unschools her own children. So I'm really happy she agreed to chat with me, and we'd love to dive in. So to get us started, Amanda, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Sure, absolutely. So, like she said, I'm Amanda. I live in Washington State, out on the Olympic Peninsula, way up a mountain in the middle of nowhere, little tiny one street town. I grew up here in Washington, like Pam said, unschooling. My mom started unschooling in, let's see, I think it began in Washington State in 1985. And she started about 2 years after that. So she was right on I'm about as old as you, well, now you know how old I am. But, I'm about as old as you can be in this state and have been legally homeschooled. And I am now the parent to three kids who are 8, 6, and 3.5, and they've always been unschooled.
That's amazing. I love that little tidbit.
Yeah.
Yourself there. But I'd love to hear a little bit about growing up, what your family's move to unschooling looked like.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, my mom was sort of right at the beginning of when it became legal. So my parents certainly didn't start out their parenting journey expecting at all to homeschool or really even knowing anything about homeschooling. So I have an older brother who's a year older than I, and originally they put him in public school in kindergarten, and that was a very negative experience for him and for my mother. It was, public school is created for square-shaped children, and my brother was a very round-shaped peg. And so it was, kindergarten at public school was like trying to fit a round-shaped peg into a square-shaped hole, and it just didn't work for him either emotionally or academically. And my mother felt like the school was kind of taking over raising her child, and she didn't like that feeling. But she felt like they didn't really have any other choice. She didn't know anything about homeschooling at the time. The following year, when he was in first grade, and it was my turn to enter kindergarten, my parents then chose to enter us into a private school, thinking that would be at least better than public school. And that was better, but still not great. My brother was still struggling, and my mom still missed us and felt like she wasn't having enough say in the raising of her kids, and also felt like she was paying now all this money for private school, and she was still spending evenings helping him with all the things he was having trouble with in school. So I think it was sometime in the spring of that year, they met a homeschooling family, and it was kind of a light bulb moment for my mom that, wow, this exists. You can school your kids at home. And she felt like she was already doing that anyway with my brother. So she picked this mom's brain and, went straight out and bought a curriculum and kind of jumped in with both feet. For that year, it was, I think, intended that it was just going to be a temporary thing because my father's job, they had gone on strike, and so they couldn't afford the private school that year, and so they thought, well, we'll try it for this year and see how this works. And we never went back to school because it worked quite well for all involved. And so, yeah, kindergarten at a private school was my only school experience in my lifetime. And we unschooled thereafter. My mom very quickly, we kind of started out, doing more traditional homeschooling. I think that lasted maybe a year before my mom discovered John Holt's book, Teach Your Own, which was kind of the Bible of the early homeschooling movement. I think that was written in 1981, and I was born in 1982. So now you really know how old I am. And so I would say after that first year or so, we very quickly moved towards unschooling. Granted, in those days, that there wasn't quite this same camps around various types of homeschooling that there is today. People didn't, being just educated at home was radical enough at that time. You were still asked questions in the grocery store because you were out and about at 2:00 in the afternoon, or yeah, but I very much see my mom as being sort of a pioneer of her time, because it takes a lot of guts and confidence, I feel like, to swim against the crowd, keeping in mind that they didn't have unschooling podcasts and forums to pop in and ask questions and all of the resources that we have today. She had to stand up against a lot of questions and a lot of people wondering what she was doing. But she certainly never seemed to falter about it in my eyes. She describes herself as always feeling very, very confident about knowing that she was doing what was right for her kids. So about second grade, I feel like, about a year in, after receiving the normal slew of questions about how we would be socialized, she and two other mothers joined together and began a homeschool co-op, which was also very much a new thing of its time, I mean, these days, I think we have dozens of them in our town, but those days we didn't. It was the first one in the area. And that grew to about 30 kids or so. And that was very much the community that I grew up in. Very, very strong community until high school or so. We met once a week for a whole day. And that provided very much a lot of our social interaction. Those moms traded kids back and forth all over the place. These days we have something called play dates where everyone gets together. Those days they just traded kids. I remember going over to my unschooled friend's house and coming back like 4 days later, because it would turn into, can they stay another night? Can they stay another night? So there was a lot of peer-to-peer teaching in that way, up and down age levels. And then also we would always be learning whatever our friends were learning at their houses also, and they would be learning whatever we were learning at our house, because everybody, if you were spending the night at a friend's house when it was time to, do school, then we all did it together. So that was a really good experience, I feel like. Yeah. And then as we became teenagers, I feel like there was a sort of natural transition into my mom more and more handing over the role of providing the materials and the direction, but us definitely being very much in charge of our own learning. At that point, she saw that we had learned to learn and developed interests that perpetuated the learning, and so she very much stayed out of it and allowed us the freedom to do so. So I think she handed me my high school diploma when I don't even remember. See, I'd have to ask my mom how old I was. I don't even know. I was in my pajamas. I remember that. I had just woken up in the morning and she handed me this piece of paper and said, "Here's your diploma if you care, and I am giving this to you specifically in your pajamas because you did most of your school in your pajamas, so you should graduate in your pajamas." And I remember her telling me, "You should not see this piece of paper as an end to learning, though. Just tuck it away somewhere. Don't think of yourself as having graduated, because You should never graduate. Learning is a lifelong pursuit. And at the time, all of my schooled friends were having these big graduation parties and getting their photos done. And I kind of felt a little jealous of that. But now as an adult looking back, I feel like that is probably the most valuable piece of advice I was ever given. Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. That's so cool. I really love that. So much awesomeness packed in there. But yeah, well, I bet, she created that paper for you probably because she saw you seeing that going on all around you, right? And you were wondering about that. So she was giving you that piece, but she wanted to impart that just that understanding that paper wasn't life, right?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
really wasn't. This wasn't because so many families around like graduating from high school, the impression is, I'm done learning. Now I'm ready to live in the adult world. And right, that piece of no.
Well, and as soon as we think that we know something, then we stop investigating. Then we stop asking questions and stop learning further. And that's what she specifically didn't want to happen. So then I spent a lot of my teenage years traveling, which I'm very thankful for, and I was only able to do because of our unschooling lifestyle. And that was something that was now looking back, I'm very much impressed with my parents' trust in me, and I think they only had so much trust because we had developed a relationship over our years of unschooling. But I would go off to foreign countries as a teenager, often, having worked and bought my plane ticket and told them, this is where I'm going. And I'm very thankful that they gave me the opportunity to have the freedom to do that.
That's really fun to hear, especially since right now we're having this conversation and my youngest is in Norway.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very exciting.
Having worked,
so
saved up his money for that, and he's been over in Europe for 3 weeks now. He's got 1 more week left.
Awesome.
But that leads
to a very valuable experience, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, exactly. It's amazing. It is a big thing for him and for us too, right? Like you said, with your mom having that level of trust and, having developed that relationship where you understand your child, that they can think for themselves, that they've been making choices, and stuff happens too,
But absolutely. I mean, I remember calling my mom when I was I'd already moved out, so I must have been 20 or just 21 maybe, and telling her, I bought a plane ticket for New York City. I'm heading there for a few weeks, and I showed up in New York. I think my bus arrived in the middle of the night, walking down the streets of New York with, to my hostel with a suitcase, 20-year-old girl, I'm sure that must have put a knot in my mother's stomach at some point, but she never let me know that she didn't have faith in me, or that that I could not accomplish whatever I had set out to accomplish. And so because she trusted that I could, I never had a doubt either. So
exactly.
But travel is really great for expanding your perspective.
Yeah. It was funny that Michael said when he told me that he was booking, he came and said, I'm planning on booking my flights, so we had like a half-hour conversation. Oh, have you thought of this? How about this? How about this? I'm like, I can't think of anything you're missing. Go for it. He said, I could see that mix of fear and excitement on your face. Like, because it was like the first, I was like, holy crap, he's going away for a month on the other side of the world. In 10 days, because he was doing last minute flights and stuff. But I was so excited for him as well, because I knew this was something that he would just love. Was totally going to be his jam, and it was going to be amazing for him too. So I needed that like 12-hour transition to process through.
Right.
And my
Right.
daughter did that, did the New York City thing too. When she turned
Oh,
18,
awesome.
she actually ended up
Yeah.
moving there.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so that first time I drove down with her, she was going to go for a couple of months. So
Awesome.
I drove down with her. We found a spot for her. We had worked out friends, had a sublet, etc. Anyway, got settled her in the neighborhood. I stayed for a couple of days, and then I scooted, and she ended up staying for
Nice.
the 6 months that she could stay. So, yeah,
Wow. Wow.
it's a beautiful thing. Like, and my other son is not interested in, he loves being home, right? It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
seeing how these things evolve out of who each child is as a person, right?
Absolutely.
As an
Yeah,
individual.
absolutely. My brother and I took very different paths as teenagers, but having the freedom to take those individual paths,
Mhm.
and yeah, and it's also, I feel like it becomes really important in the adolescent years to start to interact with the world. And it's funny, I feel like that people always say about unschoolers, oh, how will you get this socialization or these, it's like, well, how do you, when you're stuck in a classroom, how do you see the world? Like, it seems so out of context. Whereas I feel like it can be really valuable for the adolescent years to be able to actually get out there and interact with the world, and it better prepares you to be an adult. I felt very prepared to be an adult by the time I moved out, and didn't have any trouble with those things, all the adulting things, because I'd had responsibility for them already for years. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a great point. And I think we might have answered this, but the next question was, what stands out for you as you look back on your own unschooling years?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is just really deep appreciation that my innate desire to learn and know things was not damaged, you know?
Hmm.
And I never really certainly realized that or even thought about it growing up. But now, as an adult, when I compare myself to other adults, who were schooled, I see one of the marked differences that I see is that, a friend and I were just joking about this the other day, who she homeschools her children as well. But she was telling me about a paper she wrote in college and how she doesn't remember writing it at all. Doesn't have any memory of writing it, and just how different those approaches to learning are. Whereas I feel like for myself, because I always learn things because I was interested in learning them, that's never changed. There's just never been, it's just been a seamless flow throughout my life of always wanting to know things and feeling confident that I could teach myself them, and voraciously wanting to know everything. Your interest stays intact, your curiosity. What small child is not curious? I mean, kids are curious about everything. Young children ask why about absolutely everything. But a lot of 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds don't, because that's sort of gone out of them by them being told what they were supposed to know or what they were supposed to learn, or not being able to pursue the things that they were interested in. And so I feel very thankful, more and more thankful in my adult life, that was not damaged, that I have so many varied interests. And I'm generally reading, 7 books at once. No, and have always been that way. And also that I have always retained the ability to form my own opinions. I feel like there's sort of an unfortunate byproduct of school, at least our current Western model of school, because you've spent all of this time having information sort of fed to you and not being encouraged to ever question it or look deeper. I feel like one sort of develops this knee-jerk acceptance of authority, or of what authority tells you. which, yes, we have to stand on the backs of those who came before us. And it's good to know what other humans have learned too. But I feel like what society is also in desperate need of is creative, flexible thinkers who are able to approach problems in entirely new ways, especially, in today's technological society where we have all of this information sort of at our fingertips that one constantly has to react to and sort through in order to create any sort of a cohesive worldview, that it sort of ends up steering you away from critical thinking and analysis, that's sort of an unfortunate backlash of just feeding children information versus teaching them critical thinking and how to sort through the information. Honestly, I think that it has a lot to do with our culture's current rash of conspiracy theories everywhere, and the public's sort of general inability to investigate information sources. And so I find it very valuable that my critical thinking was always encouraged and stayed intact.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There was so much in there, Amanda. I love that. And I think that those two pieces that you pointed out, the system, the lack of being able to think for themselves, right? Just being fed information, and the lack of being able to follow your curiosity, right? Being told what information you're going to be given. And I mean, schools haven't been around that long, but we've been so enmeshed with that system that I think as a society, we've kind of come to see and to believe that that's the natural state of school-age kids, right? That they're not curious about things. Look, they never want to do things, and they can't think for themselves. We have to tell them what to do.
Right.
So we think that's their innate nature, whereas it's really the result of the system that they have to function within, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it kind of distorts people's idea of children or of the natural state of absolutely. Yeah. Like people saying, oh, well, if you don't put rules around how much iPad they can watch, then they're just going to sit and watch iPad all day. Well, I've certainly never met a 6-year-old who would sit on the couch all day if there's a pond full of frogs outside, or a tree to climb, or an adult who's interested in engaging with them, or various other things. It's just not really human nature.
Yeah.
But it might be if they, for a school child, but not usually.
Yeah, because so often, like once they are so involved in that system, their choices, even like evenings and weekends, really aren't their own, because they're still in reaction to that system that they have been in all week, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
They're still making good choices to take care of themselves, as in, maybe they need that decompressing time, but again, it's all in reaction to that system. It's not the innate nature of a child.
Absolutely.
What I mean? That's one thing I love, about going to unschooling conferences and just hanging out with my kids' friends. Like, I mean, we did not have all those families around us that you had growing up yourself, and I guess your children must have too. So we would travel to hang out, but to see them throughout all the ages, like right into the teen years, still being curious, still being open, always thinking critically, like to just listen to their conversations and see where they're jumping, this, that, you can see the way they're thinking through things, and it's just always so fascinating. It's always fun to hang out with them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely puts a different spin on the whole teenage years too, which is always talked about. With our society has such a funny approach to the teenage years of that it's like this impending doom, you know, that they're automatically to disconnect and not care what you have to say. And, you know, that's just not necessarily the norm if you've kept the relationship intact and if their curiosity has stayed intact. And yeah.
And you've spent those years seeing, you know, how I'm trying to think of another, but like how intelligent they are, as in how capable they are. There's the right word.
Sure.
That
Yeah. And then you
capable,
treat them like people. Yeah.
Instead of trying, you know, as little kids, we're trying to get them to be so independent so early. Society is in general, right? And yet as teens, then we want to like stop them.
Now do what I tell you. Yeah. Yeah. Not so independent. Yeah, absolutely.
So as an unschooler turned unschooling parent, now let's kind of cross that threshold. I would love to hear about the process of choosing unschooling and how that unfolded for you and your family.
Sure. Yeah. So it's let's see. So when my husband and I had children, we hadn't decided having children whether we were going to homeschool or put our children in school. I had been a nanny for a great number of years up until then, and most of those children, actually no, all of those children were public schooled. And so I had some experience with that, you know, positive and negative, and I was open to the idea. And my husband actually had a very, very different experience than mine growing up. He was raised in Stockholm. His mother is from Sweden, and he was raised there. And so he grew up going to European schools, which are very, you know, the Scandinavian system is just light and day, you know, night and day different than the American system. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't have so much of a negative experience with school. He had quite a positive one until he came here to the US for high school. And I think it was kind of only that small negative experience of seeing the difference between the Scandinavian system and the American system that even made him open to the idea of homeschooling at all. Yeah. And so when our daughter, because I'm obsessively organized, when our oldest was 2, I think, or 3 maybe, I was really torn about this choice of what we were going to do with education, and kind of didn't really know what it was like to be in school, having never been myself. My one tiny little experience with school was that I took a couple of classes at the public high school when I was a teenager, and was really confused by those teenagers' way of handling their education, because I pretty much blasted through the book they gave us and learned everything in about a week, and then was confused as to why the other kids didn't and were messing around, and aren't we here to learn? And you know, but that was pretty much the only experience that I'd ever had with being in a classroom, unless you can count, you know, kindergarten. Yeah. So, you know, so my idea, I had this sort of mishmash of ideas around what school was basically given to me by Sesame Street, you know, and all of the cultural messages that you get about school and how wonderful it is, and the big yellow bus, and, you know, smiling children and crayons, and, you know, and so I kind of always had this idea that maybe it was this amazing center of learning that I had been excluded from, you know, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't exclude my child from that. And so even though I had a very positive opinion of my own homeschooling and felt like it was a good thing, I still had to see for myself what this whole school thing was actually like. And it took one day of volunteering. I went and volunteered. I went to our local public school where she would have gone and asked if I could volunteer in some classrooms. And when I spent a day in the kindergarten classroom she would have been in, and popped into some of the other classrooms. And all of my ideas about what school were kind of came tumbling down. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Have these people ever read a book on child development? It kind of astonished me. One of the main moments being when I volunteered in the kindergarten room. It was Earth Day that day. And not only did they have all the blinds, it was a beautiful sunny day outside. And not only did they have all the blinds shut, and these kids are sitting on the rug, and the teacher read them a book about the ocean. And the teacher seemed utterly bored, and the children seemed utterly bored, and they're reading a book about the ocean for Earth Day versus being outside and doing, something in nature. And to my unschooled brain just went, this does not make any sense to me. Why would you read a book about the ocean? Go to the ocean, to know what the ocean is. You need to taste the salt and feel the waves, and and see it like a child will never learn about the ocean by a book, and so this just seemed so out of context to me. And then, a few other things really, I didn't like the way they were handled, like the whole public shaming thing of giving kids stars for what I found to be, we never had arbitrary rules in my house growing up. And I'd never had any experience whatsoever with seemingly arbitrary rules. And so I was a little bit astonished by them. When I saw the teacher giving out stars for things like raising your hand or sitting in your chair the entire time you were supposed to, or seemingly arbitrary things versus, did you enjoy something? Did you help a friend? Were you kind? Did you learn anything? And so that pretty much sealed the deal for us. I came home and said, no way in hell. And that was the end of our, discussion about school versus unschooling. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what a great way to approach it too. It's like, hey, I'm curious. That's the thing too. Sometimes there's an expectation that just because someone grew up unschooled, or that was their experience, that obviously that will be what they do with their own kids. Sure. Like you said, it's the critical thinking and the analysis skills and the understanding ourselves and understanding our environment. Of course we would want our grown kids to make a choice. Like, it's not an expectation. Yeah. It's a choice. Like everything else in their life up to this point has been a choice, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Their choice isn't a judgment of our choice. Like you said, your mom made a great choice and you enjoyed growing up the way that you did, and it was still a choice for you to make with your own kids. And I love that you walked out, that you went out. It's like, hey, I want to go gain some experience in that environment and see what it's really like. And you walked in to volunteer. I think that's what a great way to gather a bit more information for your choice, right?
Yeah. To see for myself. Yeah. And I have friends that I grew up with who were unschooled and have chosen to send their kids to school, not for any negative reasons about their own experience, just that was what suited their families best. And I've been fascinated to see that a lot of them have still managed to retain a lot of the more radical parenting principles, or the way of relating to their children, or just the approach to how they handle their children, even though they have chosen school. And so I feel like that, it doesn't have to be even such a black and white demarcation of school versus unschool, that those principles can work in any situation with any parents.
I'm jumping up and down here. And like, yeah, just because your children go to school, it doesn't mean you have to bring that whole school ethos home, right?
Yeah,
That whole,
absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
do not have to value grades like school tries to say grades have value, right?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
don't even
And you don't
have,
have to, yeah,
you don't have to
have
look
to
at their report
manipulate
cards. You
like
don't
they
have
do. Or,
to
yeah,
be upset about test scores. You know your
absolutely.
child, you're with your child, you can still value them, not their performance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great point.
I really enjoy what Lucy Aitkenreid has established, the Parent Allies group,
Mhm.
for sort of widening that conversation of making it not about whether you school or unschool, but just being an ally to your child, and that those specifically like the radical unschooling principles, which we think of being, this well, radical idea, that they can actually work just as well for your relationship with your child and for supporting them, even if they are in school or
Mhm.
whatever the situation might be.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Because when you get to the root of it, like that's why we talk about so much with unschooling. Like at first, even for me, because my kids were in school at first, you think you're choosing what you're going to replace school with, right? You're bringing them
Right.
home, and so you're worried about the learning. You're focused on the learning. You're focused on, what am I replacing that curriculum with? Even if
Right. Right.
it's not a curriculum per se. Um, but very soon as you go through deschooling, you realize, oh, this is really about living. Like we learn all the time when we're living. If we focus on just living together as a family, as people,
Yeah.
then the learning naturally happens. And so, yeah, school completely is out of the picture.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, once you realize that really it's the root of the relationships, those relationships can be there if your child, chooses to go to school for a while. Knowing that
Absolutely.
they can come home, or knowing that you're there to support them, not the school, when something when they're, upset about something or etc. If your child goes to college, whatever it is, you've gotten to the point where it's just fundamentally about you and them, about the relationship and living
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely. With my, I have a stepson also. My fourth child that was a bonus by marriage. He is 16 now.
Uh-huh.
And I think that watching his growing up, I've been observing his growing up since he was 2, and watching how my husband has handled his relationship with his son. My husband very, very naturally comes at parenting from a what you would call a radical unschool perspective.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a lot because, honestly, of the Scandinavian system, even though that sounds funny to say that he got radical unschooling from going to
From that
school.
system.
But and it's also how he was parented. His mother very much approaches things that way, and that's his personality. But it's been a joy to watch how he's managed to implement those principles and handle his relationship with his son in that way, even while his son has been in school all growing up, and even while he's only been able to be a part-time parent also, that those principles have still worked even in that situation, which just goes to show you that it really is all about the relationship and the respect and the support that you give your kids, not about school or not school.
Yeah, like all about relationships, not bringing that whole power thing in, right?
Yes.
Not bringing in
Control and
control.
manipulation and
Exactly. Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So quick question. What did you find to be the most challenging aspect of moving to unschooling, and how did you work through that?
Yeah. So this I feel like was probably the most challenging question for me to come up with an answer to. Not because I don't know what my answer is, but I feel like it's sort of a chunky answer, and I want to be clear about it. So first of all, I would say, as far as my move to unschooling with my children and in my own family, I can't really, I mean, I sat and thought about it, and I really can't come up with any challenge. I don't think there's been any challenge. Because unschooling has kind of always been the state of my life, and because those principles are very much part of my foundational knowledge and my emotional makeup. And if I'm not sure, I can always call my mom, you know. Just, you know, unschooling should come with a warning label that your children will still call you 7 times a day when they're 36, you know. Yeah. So I can't say that as far as our own unschooling, there's really been any challenges. It's really been something I've come out very naturally, and not really something that I think about or really have any challenges with. If anything, you know, of course, growing up and starting out unschooling with my own kids, I'd never heard of a process called deschooling, but now writing about it and reading other people, you know, I've read so much and heard so many other parents that I know talk about this whole process of deschooling that they've had to go through, which is sort of, you know, this whole process of almost unbrainwashing yourself from the system and kind of rewiring your neurons. And whenever I hear a parent talk about that, I always silently thank my mother for not doing that to me, because I feel like I've had to go through that process not at all. I haven't had to go through any deschooling. I saw that was, you know, unschooling was sort of my starting out point, and I'm appreciative of that. What the challenging aspect has been for me has been more around my own identity with it, and identifying with being willing to kind of call myself an unschooler or put my children in that camp or want to write about it. Because as happens, as is human nature, you know, we want black and white answers about everything. And especially when we've come from this very black and white system, most parents, the vast majority of parents, certainly every parent that I know, came at homeschooling or unschooling having been public schooled themselves and finding that a negative experience, and so wanting to do something totally different. And then there's this possibility for coming at it from this reactionary place, and I feel like there's always a potential negative with coming at anything from this reactionary place, because it can send you too far the other direction. It can swing the pendulum too far the other direction if you're not coming from a really solid understanding of what you're doing. And you know, it's been especially disheartening to watch some of the conversation around radical unschooling especially take that turn. Is I feel like there's so much misunderstanding about what it actually is, or what, you know. And let's see. So I feel like a lot of parents that I observe, when they're coming from this reactionary place, it develops this resistance to creating boundaries, a resistance to being a leader for their own children, a resistance to ever saying no about anything. In my own head, I call this freedom fascism, which are two silly words to put together, but you know, idolizing freedom to the point where the parent is afraid to interfere with their child at all, or idolizing peace to the point where the parent is afraid to create boundaries or have any expectations of the child, because then the child might resist, and they think that resistance might damage the relationship, you know. And so you know, and so many of the common unschooling or radical unschooling debates would fall on these lines, you know, the screen time debate, or the food debate, or the making your kids do chores debate, or, you know, and so I have hesitated to want to even identify with unschooling as a dogma. I feel like there's this sort of wave of dogma developing around the idea of it. And whenever we move away from one dogma, it's so easy to just pick up another, you know, because we want those black and white answers, you know. But I feel like dogma always stands in the way of direct perception, you know. And the most important thing with unschooling is that direct perception of your child and of what their needs are and what they are telling you. And so that very much requires no dogma, you know.
That critical thinking, right?
Yeah, that critical thinking, that being willing. And so it's not about, you know, unschooling is not about don't ever pick up a workbook, or the second you have a phonics book in your house, you're not an unschooler, you know. You said your kid can't eat Skittles all day, you are not an unschooler, you know. It's this whole sort of dogma that I feel like does not serve the conversation, and certainly does not serve the children in the conversation. And so I've had this sort of emotional resistance to wanting to even call myself that, or wanting to even write about it, because of this irritation with this sort of dogma that has developed around that, you know. I feel like I'm more interested in being a part of a wider conversation around children's rights in general, around respecting children in general, around, and that can, and then also around understanding what a child needs evolutionarily and to reach their full potential. And that really is just a matter of science and of knowing what a human being needs. And you can, like we said before, it's not really a matter of school versus not school, because what is school? It's just a place for children to be able to go, because we've created this society where parents go to work in a manner where their kids can't come. And so it's just a building really with people in it. And you can make that into whatever you want. I mean, school could be a place where, and in certain places, they're trying out new theories. Sweden would be a very good example of that. Some of the newest schools, charter schools in Stockholm, pretty much function on unschooling principles. You know, there are no age separations. It's complete freedom as far as the child following their own time scale with learning, not having a curriculum per se, but following interests, things like that. So you can take those same principles and apply them to any situation, I think, which people try to say. I mean, how many times has Sandra Dodd said it's about principles versus rules, you know? But as she also says, people get hung up on words. And we're still, I feel like, at those of us who are writing about unschooling and speaking about it are still trying to come up with the right words to stop this whole dogma from developing around what we're talking about, you know.
I love it. I just could jump into that word piece there, and because it makes me laugh. There, I can't quote it right now, but there's a chapter in the unschooling journey in my book where I talk about that. You know, and, you know, it's been that way, choosing words and how you describe philosophies for thousands of years. That challenge
absolutely
has been there, right? Because words mean different things to different people depending on the perspective, the lens through which they're reading them.
Absolutely.
So as I describe, you just hit the root right there. As we describe what we do, as we, you know, say yes more, we, you know, it's very rare for us to say no. People who are, like you said, they're coming from growing up in that schooling experience. They're like, so that's an unschooling
don't ever
rule.
say no.
We always say yes.
Right, exactly.
Instead
you know,
of that critical thinking piece, right?
Absolutely.
It's not a rule. It's the moment. what's going on in
Absolutely.
this moment? Who are the people involved? What is the actual situation? What is the time of day? Like, there are so
Yeah.
many different
So
things
many
that can
variables.
affect that choice in that
Yeah,
moment.
absolutely.
That's where the learning is too, right? Figuring out all those pieces.
Totally.
That's where the critical thinking is. Not, oh, unschoolers always do this or never do this, right?
Right, right.
And that's where
When,
the dogma comes in, where they
right.
think, okay, I need rules. I'm not following school's rules now. I want to follow
Yes. So give me
unschooling
a set.
rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. I'm
It
sorry.
doesn't work that way. Absolutely. Yeah. When my husband and I first got together, so Swedish is his first language.
Mhm.
And even though we both spoke English and he was fluent in English, I still felt like oftentimes we would talk together and it's like we were saying the same words, but we were not meaning the same things. And until I decided to teach myself Swedish in order to better understand him. And so I did, and it so opened up our ability to communicate, because I suddenly understood what he was meaning by the words he was saying. And I feel like it's similar to that, that like when an unschooler and someone who's grown up in a public school are talking, you might be using the same words, but you're not at all meaning the same
Same
things.
thing.
And there are so many writers, mostly, some of, I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 52. You gave away your age. I'll give
okay,
away my age.
okay.
No problem.
So I was writers of my mother's generation are doing such beautiful work, in yourself included, in moving the conversation forward and in trying to find the words to explain these principles. But there has still been this sort of dogma that has developed around it. Yeah. And so trying to wrap my mind around how to move through that, like Carol Black talks about when you had her on. I love Carol Black. Oh my goodness. I love her essays so much. And I love her movie she made, her documentary. But she talks about unschooling being more of like a step in the right direction of dismantling patriarchy and the oppressive systems that have been with us so far in our evolution as a species. But the moment that we start thinking of it as an end in and of itself, or turning the method into this dogma, then we're stopping there. We're stopping progress. That's how I see it anyways, where, the moment we say, okay, I've got this new dogma, then we're not unschooling, because we're not investigating any further. We're not talking any further. We're not, we're closing down that investigation, And so
I'm like, okay, this is like the Unschooling Journey book. I'm sorry, people. It's rude to plug your own book, whatever. And I'll put a link. But that's the whole point. It is a journey, and it's an ongoing thing. Like, once you get to that point like, so many people get to kind of understanding the day-to-day of unschooling, and then they stop there.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But if you keep trying to learn about it, you keep trying to understand it, you get further. And then you get to that point where you see how it is a part of life, and how that it just continues on. Like, I mean, for you, it's become your lifestyle as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You just how you're not stopping learning, right?
Yeah.
It is an approach to living. It's an approach to life, and it's an openness to understanding that there's always more to learn. Like,
absolutely.
And always more to learn about other people. You understand other people's journeys
absolutely
so much more empathetically, because you see that they are just where they happen to be right now on their own journey, right? And
absolutely.
we're all kind of one. We're all people here. Anyway,
absolutely.
I won't get
yeah. It's kind of like the process of having more than one child. Is you can have one child, and you can say, by the time that child is 5, okay, I've got this down. I know this parenting thing. And then you have another child and you realize you don't know anything because you don't know that child. You know, you might have known your first one, and now you have to learn everything again because it's a different person. You know, we have 4, and every one we've had to learn everything differently and all over again because, you know, what works for one doesn't work for another about pretty much anything, you know.
And that view expands. You now realize that, okay, that's how my family operates. We are all truly unique individuals, completely.
Absolutely,
Every other person I look at outside in the world is also in that same state or
absolutely.
whatever. But they are all, they're all individuals with their own, strengths, weaknesses. They all have their own viewpoint, that lens through which they see things because of their experiences growing up, etc. And openness to learning, their curiosity, their creativity, like those are all bits and pieces of them that are just in this moment, right? That's who they are in this moment.
Absolutely.
But understanding that we're all learning and growing, etc. And yes, that's very cool. And that's one thing I love about the podcast too. You've mentioned Lucy, you've mentioned Carol. You know, they all have they all, understand unschooling, and it's so fun to see what aspect has connected with them. You know, you talk about
absolutely. They all have a unique voice.
Yes, exactly. Something I love that they've all found the piece that just connects for them, that they love talking about, right? All these
absolutely, and we need all those voices. Yeah, somebody might so much more identify with Lucy's writing than with mine, and that's great because then they have something that they, that they can gain understanding from. Or somebody might really like Sandra's unique approach of explaining something versus mine or Carol's or someone else's, and so all those unique voices and ways of explaining something are so important, I feel like.
And which is why we need our critical thinking skills, people.
Absolutely.
Because we find what connects with us because the knowledge about ourselves, our self-awareness is growing. We understand
totally
different things connect with us in different ways, and being open to finding rather than, latching on to that one dogma and, I have to get everything from just this one source. No,
absolutely.
We're all individuals. I may grab, something, the way you say some things may really connect with me and help me really understand one aspect. And then I might get another aspect from someone else. It's beautiful.
Totally.
Love the way that's developed.
Totally. Yeah. So that's been my biggest challenge, mainly in deciding whether I want to be a part of the conversation or whether I want to write about unschooling, because I don't want to be seen as holding it up as a dogma or an end in and of itself, because and not everyone can unschool, or not everyone chooses to, for instance, unschooling requires at least one of the parents to, be around. You don't have school as a babysitter, I know in our family that has required enormous life changes to make that possible. Pre having children, we had owned a farm for about 13 years with a nice big mortgage to go with our nice big property. And my husband was was an engineer by trade and was off working a lot of the time. And it was just not a lifestyle where we could keep one of us at home to be doing this, or it would be one of us at home to the complete exclusion of the other parent. And so we ended up, leaving that home and paying cash for a piece of property and putting a yurt up. And we live completely off grid in a yurt. in order to enable the lifestyle where one or the other of us can always be home, you know, and so, and not everyone is willing to do or able to do that. And so it's important that, you know, that parents don't think that, and I've had parents, you know, like I run an unschooling co-op as well, and called the Village School. And a friend and I started that up, and I've had parents contact us going, oh, but, you know, is it okay? We kind of homeschool. We don't really unschool, or we're doing an online program through the school district. So, you know, we don't fit into your category, you know, and feeling like that's a negative, or that they're going to be judged for their choices, or that they can't apply these beautiful principles to their lives because they haven't made the same choices, you know, when really that's not the way that it works at all, you know. Respect and connection works in any situation, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, the same thing through when I used to run a conference as well, you know.
Yeah.
It's useful in that they have an idea. They have a good idea of what you're trying to create, right?
Sure.
I mean, just as you wouldn't want them to come in with expectations and be poo-pooing what you guys are doing. So,
yeah,
you know, it's great to have that information, because that's what we're all looking for, right? Is
sure.
connections.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, to have enough information so that you can see the potential for connection, and then reaching out and seeing how it goes.
Right.
I think that's great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think this came from a piece that you wrote as well, about the idea of trust. So I was curious to hear about how trust is playing out in your unschooling lives.
Yeah. So, I definitely feel like the trust that my parents put in me has been a great, great benefit to my life, to my relationships with each of them, and to just my own development as a person. I feel like my parents did a very good job of trusting me to make my own choices, and trusting my ability to find and integrate information, and to think critically, and form my own opinions, even if they were very different from my parents' opinions, which I feel like that's kind of the crux of it.
Yep.
Like it's good and easy to let your kids develop your own opinions until they develop ones that are completely different than yours. And then that's really where, you know, okay, so then what? Then what does that do to the relationship? And so I feel like my parents did, and I can say that because I pretty much have developed opinions in many other areas of life that are not unschooling. I've developed opinions that are very, very different than both of my parents. And that could have been an obstacle. It very much could have been, and I think oftentimes is an obstacle in people's relationships with their parents. But it has not been an obstacle at whatsoever in my relationship with my parents. And I think that is entirely due to trust, due to their trust in me, that they don't feel threatened, that, you know, that I'm not questioning or their choices by making different ones, like we said earlier, but also that I'm not having a negative opinion of them just because I have come to completely different conclusions. And I really, really appreciate that in my relationships with both of my parents, that we can talk about things that we completely disagree about, but that they have no negative opinion of me, that they still very much trust my own ability to make those choices. This was evidenced by many ways that they approached things as I grew up, both trusting me to go off traveling and things like that, and not instilling fear in me, not instilling a bunch of what ifs you know, well, this could happen, or well, that could happen. And so I always trusted that I was capable of pretty much anything that I set my mind to, which enabled me a lot more mental freedom to just go for it instead of getting hung up in fear about things or questioning whether I could actually accomplish it. Trusting me to follow my own interests. I had, you know, as most unschoolers do, I found my particular interests growing up. As I'm sure won't surprise you, writing was my main one.
Yeah.
And that both of my parents put enormous trust and pride and support into helping me pursue my interests in many different ways. One example would be that I have this vivid memory of being about my daughter's age now, about 8, and I wrote this book. I was a much more terrible speller than she is, and I had wrote this book, you know, we didn't even have a computer or a typewriter, so it was just by hand, you know, drawn the pictures for it. And I came to my mother and said, I want to publish this book. And rather than telling me, oh, honey, wait till you're older, wait till you have better skills, wait till you can spell, you know, she didn't do any of that. She helped me research which publishing house would be best. She helped me figure out how you find a publishing house, how you write a query letter, how, you know, and we sent this book off. I don't know that I ever heard back from them, or probably got a rejection. I don't, you know, remember, but that wasn't the point. Yeah. What I had learned from that experience was that she trusted my interests and what I wanted to do, that they were valid, that they were good, that they were, you know, that I should continue. And all growing up, they provided those sorts of experiences, both of them. I was accepted into, are you familiar with the Institute of Children's Literature at all? It's a college that is by correspondence. Mm-hmm. And so they have a like aptitude test to get into their correspondence program. And so I took this aptitude test when I was, I think, 14, and they didn't know that I was 14. Yeah. And so I got a letter back saying, no, I guess they did know I was 14, because I got a letter back saying, well, you're accepted, but you're only 14. So maybe let's wait a year or something. But I ended up eventually enrolling in that program and doing that for about 4 years. And that was a huge money and, you know, commitment on my parents' part, that they had no problem. You know, I remember my father sitting me down and saying, you know, why do you want to do this? What are your goals? How are you going to use this? Okay, great. You know, let's do it. I had thought them out. And so I have strong appreciation for all of those, as far as my relationship with my parents and my ability to trust myself and my ability to trust my own logic and thinking, to not second guess myself, to not get hung up in fear. And then that has enabled me to have so much more ease in my relationship with my children, in being able to do the same thing, to trust their development, to trust that they have the ability to learn what they need to learn. If I provide the right tools and environment, to trust their choices around things. I have a ballet background and used to teach ballet. And so I put my daughter in ballet when she was like, you know, 2.5, 3 years old, hoping that maybe she would have the same interest. And of course, you know, she doesn't. But she spent about 3 years doing ballet, and she was really, really good. She had, you know, I was a ballet instructor, so I knew that she had the ability to do it. But she came to me when she was 7 and told me, Mom, this is not my thing. This is your thing. I don't like it. I don't want to be on stage. It's not my thing. And so rather than pushing her to do something that she was not wanting to do, that wasn't her interest, you know, we let that drop. And what was her interest, which she told us from about the time she was 3, was violin. She wanted to learn violin. She's been telling us she wanted to learn violin since she could talk. And so we found her a place where she could do violin, and she's obsessed with it, that she lives and breathes violin. And so just, and that's been so easy for me as a parent to just trust those things and to go with it and to not second guess and to not worry, to not have all this worry that they're not going to find their way, that they're not going to learn what they need to learn, which just creates so much ease in dealing with your kids and in your relationship with them. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That was spectacular, Amanda. I love the thread that you pulled right through that whole thing from your parents' trust and how that helped you so much, and then how you could flip that and do that for your children as well. That was lovely to hear.
Awesome.
And,
I feel like it bleeds over into every aspect of life too, not just academic things, because, for instance, my grandmother came from the generation where women were still put to sleep during childbirth. And my mother reclaimed that, she had natural childbirth, and so then she learned to trust herself that she could birth without interference. And so then, because she had developed that trust in herself, she spoke so positively and beautifully about birth my whole growing up, that then I just didn't even have that hang up when it came time to have my own kids. I'd already trusted myself that it would be no problem, and it's, into when you wean your children, trusting that they will wean when they need to, or get out of your bed when they need to, or, learn to pick up after themselves at some point, or, everything.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I really enjoyed hearing that whole process. No, process probably isn't the right word, but the history. And again, that trust, I feel like trust is so wound up back to the fact that we're all individuals, right? We can't know for someone else. Right?
Yes, very much, right?
Yeah. We need to trust.
Very true. Yeah.
All right, our last question. What is your favorite thing about your unschooling lifestyle right now?
Well, currently, right now, I am just having so much joy in watching my children's curiosity and aliveness in relation to their learning, which is the same thing that I experienced. Mm-hmm. And I'm noticing it in them, very particular, because I spend all these years nannying for school children, and I see this very, very huge difference, especially that happens around when a child hits maybe second or third grade, or there's a very big difference. Of course, not black and white, so you can't say this, for every situation. Yeah. But in general terms, there starts to be this difference, and I see in my children just this burning curiosity to know everything, this joy in relating to their learning. My daughter is a obsessive reader. She, keeping her in books is like a part-time job. She blasted through the entire Harry Potter series twice last year. And to see, not that I would see it as a problem if she wasn't reading at all and was interested in something else, but to see her develop that passion and to read because she's interested in it, and because it's fun, and not because somebody made her or told her that it was important, and even just her whole process of learning to read was very much because she was given a book for her 6th birthday. Her grandmother, her farmor in Sweden, gave her this abridged copy of Midsummer Night's Dream, and something about the book Shakespeare sparked her curiosity, and she spent about 2 weeks doing nothing but trying to puzzle out reading that book.
Wow.
And she went from like 3-letter words to Shakespeare in literally 2 weeks. Abridged Shakespeare, but but just to see it develop out of joy, out of interest, out of curiosity. My husband and I were just saying how over this summer, where we haven't done a single thing that could remotely be called schoolish, our 6-year-old is suddenly writing us notes all the time. He's handing us notes all the time and doing that, like trying to spell things. And so I get little notes all the time throughout the day, and to see him doing that because he wants to write notes and he has something to say and he's writing it because he wants to and he has something to communicate, not because somebody made him do it, And I just take so much joy in seeing that joy and seeing them relate to things because they're interested, and seeing that curiosity stay intact.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the word aliveness, that you use that when you're talking about that curiosity and alive.
Right.
That's it, right? That's such a difference that you see a lot in unschooled kids, because they haven't been told, no, or that's don't be doing that, having
absolutely
judgment on the things that they're interested in, because any interest can take them, whether it's Shakespeare or Harry Potter can take them to reading, or it's something else entirely, maybe it's video games. It doesn't matter. When it's a personal interest, something that they're truly curious about and interested in, it will take them to all those places. There'll be things to read about it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there'll be things to write about it. These are not skills in and of themselves. They're skills to accomplish things, right?
Absolutely. They're tools. Yeah, they're tools that help you relate to the world. Yeah, and the thing is that if you're not out there in the world, you can't relate to it,
You have the tool as the tool. The tool has to be, the end result, right? When you can't have something fun to use it for.
Absolutely, which makes it kind of silly, like shutting kids up in a classroom and trying to give them these tools out of context and out of relationship with interacting with the world.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Amanda. It was so much fun.
Of course. It's been lovely, Pam. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. That's awesome. And before we go, where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, so currently, so I have a blog at raisingunschoolers.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook under the same Raising Unschoolers. I also have a Facebook forum, which I've just started, which kind of started as a local thing, but anyone can join it. I'm tired of fielding questions, so I made come here and ask me a question. So that's Raising Unschoolers on Facebook. That's a forum where you can ask questions. And then you'll see my articles from time to time in The Natural Parent or on Medium or other magazines. And then you can watch for my book under the same title, Raising Unschoolers, which will be done as soon as I finish it, because I'm an unschooler and apparently I don't even go by my own deadlines. So
oh, that's awesome.
Hopefully it'll be out next year.
There'll be links to all those things in the show notes for people. And thank you so much, Amanda. It was such a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. It's been lovely.